Welcome to our Harmony Power Vodcast. And I have an amazing, world-renowned spiritual person who has so many different modalities and experiences that I'm like, got to have her on my show. So I want to welcome Julie Poole. Thank you. You're from England, right?
I am. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here. I'm actually from Wales in the UK. Welsh people get very precious about we're not English, but I'm in the UK, yes.
Thank you for correcting me because I have much to learn about other parts of the world. Even I've traveled, I'm still learning.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Well, I tell you, there are so many things that we can talk about, and obviously you're on the show to get a Harmony Power Award at the end. But I would like people, if you could take us to like a maybe a 5 minute, 10 minute journey of your childhood and the gifts. We all have gifts. We all have spiritual gifts, and there are those of us that things just happen, traumas bring us to these gifts, and there are those people who are kind of closed off, but we all have access, whether we want to or we don't want to. We have access all the time. And I just feel that, I've had my experiences I shared with you prior to this, but this show is not about me, and it's about you and what you've done. And with Harmony Power, just, and I mentioned this earlier, we established the first mandated anti-bullying program in a major worldwide city. Kids having 33 days to change the world, right? So they do something positive and great, and they get recognized for it. And I'm like, I like to recognize people out there impacting thousands of people on a daily basis with who they are, what they've done, and what they do. So let's talk about that. Childhood, what happened? What did you do? How did you take the trauma? What were the experiences? All the way from that to, you've got the childhood traumas, you've got the spiritual gifts of the healing, you have the what you've done with those gifts and how you're helping the world, and then you have the UFO aspect. And I had the Honorable Paul Hellyer, who was the head of the Canadian Defense, on this vodcast when he was alive 3 years ago. And then we have, future events and, where this is all going, all this trauma that everyone's experiencing, which I feel it's a beautiful thing. It's like a baby goes through pain, a mother goes through birth, and we're going to like a real rebirth, unlike we've seen in maybe a couple thousand years. So please do that for me to see if we can go back.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no problem. So, yes, we keep doing these rebirths. They've been going on for several hundred years. There was a big one that happened in the middle of the 20th century with the World Wars, and then COVID was another one. These are rebirths for people, and rebirths are uncomfortable. We push through into a completely different way of thinking, way of being, and each time we're raising our vibration. And that's kind of what happened to me as a child, in that all children are born with spiritual gifts. We're souls inhabiting a human form, and we are aware of that when we're babies and when we're young children. But for a lot of people, they begin to close it down when they get to about 4 or 5 and start school, and things start to change. For me, it didn't. It stayed fairly open, and then it had a big push open when I had a traumatic event around the age of about 8.
Hmm.
And through that traumatic event, I left my body. I had an out-of-body experience. And this can happen. It happens. A lot of people will say this happens in a car accident or any kind of, big traumatic event, whether it's something that you didn't see coming, or whether it's whatever the circumstances are, that we can, if push comes to shove, break through the veil. All right, we have the veil between our human world and the universal world, and when we leave our body, we are coming into the soul energy, being able to see the body from outside of ourselves. Then we start to see that, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know this is who I truly am. I am this light, this spark of consciousness. And in that state of being, I can see and experience all sorts of things that I couldn't see and experience when I was in my body. Now, as a child before that event, I was aware of energy. I could sense it, and we all can to a certain extent. Anybody walk in a room where there's been a big argument, you'll feel the tension in there. You can cut the atmosphere with a knife, like we say. We can all feel that. And I was very aware and sensitive, but I wasn't necessarily seeing. But after this event, when I left my body, during that, well, during and after, I was very aware of what I could see. So I left my body and I rose up and I was sat high up in a tree, with this man next to me in this beautiful white robes, and he had his arm around me and he was showing me the birds and the leaves on the trees and the energy around the trees. I could see the energy of the tree. I could see these different colors. I could see the vibrations. I could see the energies within the birds, and particularly with this man that was with me, and this beautiful, open-hearted, compassionate, total acceptance. I felt incredibly safe, incredibly at peace. And it was just the most magical, wonderful experience. And when we had finished having our little time together, he introduced himself to me as, "You can call on me anytime. I'm always here from you. And my name is Jesus." And I said to him, "I've heard of you. I've heard of you. I wasn't brought up as a churchgoer, but, it had been taught in school and things like that." So he was my new best friend. And then I came back down into my body, and those visions, the ability to see more than our normal eyesight would see,
Right.
stayed. It remained. And from that point forward, I was just far more aware than I was before. And it continued to evolve and develop over the next 10 years, as did my relationship with Jesus and with God. And so I wasn't religious, but I was now extremely spiritually, openly active and searching for answers. So Jesus became my guru, my teacher, and we were talking about things. And I started going to church then. And I kept looking and kept searching for a long time for my answers through the churches, but couldn't really find them.
Yes, and
And so
by the way, this is on a personal level. I pray to Jesus, but I don't view Jesus in the Christian doctrine, the way they promote it, or Catholicism. I support all of these. My son will be going to Catholic school, but not for Catholicism, but he's a basketball player. It's another, but what I was going to say is that I love Buddhism, and I have a Buddhist statue and I have a Jesus statue, and he's holding a mezuzah because I said he was Jewish, right? So there's things that people don't realize, but I look at this person that came to humanity to teach love, and then we turned him into a god and him into a fear-mongering god, one that judges and can cause us great pain and grief if we don't follow the rules. So I'm sure that your experience was very opposite. He's like, "I'm just love, I'm here." Am I right?
it was exactly the same in that, Jesus was saying that this is the Christ consciousness, the Christ light. This is the empowerment. This is God is love. I am God. I am love. So are you. And this was a new concept, like, oh, and he was explaining about the I am. When he says, "I am the way and the light," he said, "I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the love, the power, the source energy within us all, the creative consciousness within us all."
Exactly.
And that we come from love. Yeah. And that is what comes within us. And my house is full of Buddhas, and I have lots of different types of energy, but there's no religion, there's no particular indoctrination. It is a spiritual consciousness, and that all religions have an element of spirituality within them. It's about diving within to feel your own truth into what feels right for you. And my understanding and what I teach from is coming from a place of love, is that I often will say, what would love say? What would love do? That any indoctrination, any kind of dogma that preaches fear or disempowerment is not true spiritual consciousness, because that is not the way the universe works. That is not love. That is. So from that point forward, it was always about helping people to know their freedom, to find their own truth and their own way, to find their own sense of love and empowerment, and to find God in everything and everyone, to find the oneness and to rise above whatever uncomfortable, traumatic, difficult challenges that we've had, that we can view them through the lens of victim, woe is me, this is awful, this shouldn't have happened, which is perfectly natural and perfectly normal, and working through that to find the wisdom that is gained from those experiences, to be able to then use that wisdom to grow your own sense of light and power and harmony, and to grow others. So how can we then use that, utilize that knowledge to be able to lift others into the same higher vibrational space? And the basics of all life, that root chakra is about safety and security, and everything comes above that. You cannot move through the higher level energies until you've got that first foundational one in. And so the priority for me, with the way I teach, is helping people to know who they are and help them build their sense of self and safety, security, empowerment, their own creativity, to step into their own sense of joy. And then you move up into the heart, and
Yeah.
living through the heart and living from the heart and being able to see life through the lens of the heart is beautiful. And I, through that, studied spirituality and all different forms, and spoke with the universe regularly, and had many visits upstairs, as I call them, into different realms and dimensions, and up to the angelic realms. I've had wonderful conversations with higher beings of light, HEBs, as I call them, highly evolved beings
Any
that you
particular,
might call ETs and spaceships and all the rest of it.
any profound stories that you'd like to share?
There was an occasion when I was 21 where I left my body again, where I was taken to the angelic realms for healing. And I spent some time there, about 3 days there, while my body was being rebooted and restored back to its ability to function in life. And in that 3 days, I had lots of conversations with angels, with Jesus, with my higher level guides and ascended masters. And those conversations were talking about the future, my purpose here, why I'd suffered the challenges and traumas that I had up until that point. And they were talking about me clearing karma for myself, for my ancestral line, raising the consciousness of the collective. And that was the first time that I'd really heard about what's the conscious collective, what does that mean? And they were talking to me about that.
Say be clear and calm, right? Those are the two things that they would tell you, to be clear and calm. Is that what you're saying? The angelic, when they were communicating with you, as far as how to process and how to connect, I heard you use those words, and I was just curious, to what that dialogue was.
They were saying to me that my time on this earth, that thus far up until 21, that had been trauma after trauma after
Yeah.
trauma,
Yes.
had been chosen by my soul to
Yeah.
experience those traumas in order to grow in love, in forgiveness, in compassion, in the loss of judgment of self and others. And
Yes.
that was the key. And they were explaining to me that it's one of the highest forms of love
That
is to.
touches me. That touches me right there. I almost died 3 times. The third time, I came into my house in my basement and screamed because I had a neurological attack on my body from a shingles vaccine, an allergic reaction, and I just screamed. And I cried to Jesus, who has been my mentor and guide, and God, and just that whole. And 80% of all the pain I had endured left the next day, but all I heard was, "Don't judge yourself, don't judge others, don't judge those who judge." Anything, and it was exactly what they wanted removed.
And
And
don't judge the judgment.
judge the judgment, all of that. It was incredible. So you saying that is, to me, that's like, when you're at that level, that's like that, and forgiveness. The forgiveness is like the most beautiful thing, and everybody struggles. And what I've learned when people hate and they don't like, or I said, you can hate. I said, it's like eating a poison that you want to hold on to.
Yeah.
Your choice. You got to hold on to that. So people have to go through that process. But I interrupt you because I'm sorry. I'm like a kid. I get excited when I hear things that are relatable. So
That's
please.
all right. You interrupt anytime you want to. That's absolutely fine. So yeah, they were talking about higher level consciousness, collective consciousness. That was the first time I'd experienced it. So this was the second time I'd left my body, and I was a bit older and wiser. You know, I wasn't particularly wise at 21, but I was more so than I was at 8. And
Yeah.
they were explaining things to me. And they were talking about the fear and the abuse that was residing energetically within the collective consciousness, because man has been so abused and disempowered over millennia after millennia after millennia. And that they were saying, many of you have chosen to incarnate at this time with a higher level vibration to experience some of that trauma so that you can transmute it, and not just your own, but those of your ancestors and those energies within the collective consciousness. They talked about a group of us, and they numbered many thousands that were incarnated during that time, to be the forerunners, if you like. So I was born in the 60s, and they were saying many of us came down in that time, 60s, 70s, to be the forerunners of when the awakening would really start happening, which would be after 2000, and that it would be building up very strongly from 2000, and then between 2012 and 2032, this 20-year period, is when they called it the golden age would be dawning. And that as that golden age dawned, it would be a massive rebirth for the collective, for the whole planet. And so there would be trials and tribulations, and there would be things breaking open and smashing open. And this began in the 60s, but it would be building up momentum. And so as it built up, and a lot of truth would come to light, truth is a higher vibration than deceit and lies, as we know. So as truth comes to light, things are lifting, things are coming into the open, into the light. And they were saying that through the 80s and 90s, there would be more truths coming up. So I was being kind of trained, if you like, directly by Jesus and other higher beings of light from the age of about 8. So by the time we came to 2000 and I was in my late 30s, I was seen as something of an expert. I wouldn't particularly class myself as that, but I'd had, 20, nearly 30 years worth of training. I knew a fair bit. And so when people were starting to awaken then from 2000, and it was happening at a rate of knots in the UK particularly, there was Buddhist shops and angel shops springing up. There was meditation centres opening up. This wasn't there in the 70s, 80s and 90s, not in the UK. And it was starting to open up. And people were coming to me. I opened up a class and said, if you wanted to know, we'll meditate. It was a meditation group, which then turned into a teaching class. And I would channel information, and I was channeling answers to them, and I was sharing the knowledge, really. And at that time, I retrained and became a hypnotherapist as well, which I was guided to do. It felt absolutely right in my heart on every part of me. And I understood quite quickly why, because hypnotherapy is all about the subconscious. And the subconscious is basically the driving force for our behaviors and patterns and our abundance or their lack of it. And so understanding that our beliefs about I'm a victim, I have no power, there's nothing I can do about it, and so many other beliefs and around money, poverty consciousness, struggle, lack, the way we disempower ourselves in so many ways with health and well-being and relationships and all sorts. So I was understanding the way the subconscious works and these beliefs, and how we could change them, reprogram into the new dawning age, into empowerment and freedom and liberation. Not so that there would be any kind of fighting or discourse, but a gentle awakening into your own personal power and freedom and choices, to see that wherever you are in life or whatever struggles you have, there is always a better way if you choose to find it. And those blocks and barriers that we have in our beliefs that say, I can't, it's impossible, that we can change those. And by changing them, we suddenly literally see the light. We see a new door that wasn't there before. We see a new way forward we couldn't find before. So, go on.
Yeah, so relating to that, my when I do my meditations, and we, if we allow it, we get, some people call it downloads, messages, voice, whatever, you know. I've had since I was a kid, I'd be told things, I just follow it. But trauma is actually our power. People don't see that way. Trauma, they become a victim to the trauma. They don't realize it's a power source. Without that, there's no evolution. The soul cannot move forward without some form of trauma. Some more severe than others, others multiple. And our soul is choosing that coming into this reality, what traumas we want to experience, but we're not given anything that we can't overcome. It's almost like in Christianity, they'll say, you're not given a cross you can't carry. That's kind of like this, that's kind of synergetic. So when you think about bullying and things of that nature that people go through, all these traumas, I look back, it's beautiful. I called my father on Father's Day, and look, there was moments, it was a rocky ride, but I said to him, I appreciate you so much, all of it. He was just speechless. He was quiet on the phone. He was trying to make a joke. He wasn't trying to take, because I love the whole thing. And that's what being realized. You have to love the source of which you experienced. And even that person expressed dark pieces and brought out your dark pieces, and you've risen above that. Love that source of which you experienced. And this is a kind of like what a lot of people in humanity are not. They're getting it. Some are getting it. Some are still not there, and some are kind of in the middle, but more are on that road. And I find that that is a belief system, right? Where a belief is, this happened to me, for me. Everybody sympathize with me. Look at what happened to my life, and oh, poor you. No, I empathize, like, with your experience. I don't sympathize. I feel what you feel. Now, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to go and change the world, make the world better? Because the only way to come out of a trauma is through gratitude and giving. Gratitude and giving equals God. That is God, and it's God in action. And that's what I try to share with people to deal with that. So this is, highly relatable to the things you were saying. That's why I felt the need to say that.
I think there's a few, bits that, yes, we definitely do grow and expand our soul through trauma, but it's not the only way. I would say that it's a fast track way. It does shift things rather quickly. When you've had an experienced big trauma, whether it be the death of a loved one or, a trauma to yourself, it's a big trauma. And you will naturally go into victim mode. That's perfectly healthy and natural. But then we will hit a wall, because we can't continue to live in that victim mode. We'll hit a wall where there's contrast. Do we go towards working through this and out the other side, or do we become bitter and twisted and closed and cold? We have that contrast, that polarity. Which way are we going to go? And when we choose to go to the light, to overcome it, to work through it, it is a choice. But while we're in victim mode, there is no choice. We believe strongly, this is my identity. I'm a victim and I'm in that victim mode. But when we begin to start shifting that this is really uncomfortable, I don't want to live in this energy anymore, then it's a choice. Do I embrace this horrible feeling and live like this the rest of my life, or do I work through it and out of it? When we work through it and out of it, we then become the compassion and the empathy and the understanding of that which we have experienced, which is beautiful. And there's massive soul growth. But
So
we have
the process, right? So you have the trauma, and you're saying, I'm saying, hey, the trauma is your power. And you're saying, hey, there's a process of coming out of it that the soul's journey is choosing. And I'm totally on board with that. I kind of simplify things. I go from A to And
Simplifying is great, but there is, I want people to understand it is a process, because if they're stuck in that trauma right now, they may be feeling they're doing something wrong because they're stuck in that trauma. And I just want to say that, that if you've been stuck there for decades, it's time to take your power and say, I'm ready to come out of this now. But if this is quite new and quite raw, give yourself a little bit of time and then pull yourself through and out of it. But there is a way. So I spent the next, I have done ever since, really helping people to release their trauma and find a way, and finding different modalities to help them, because we're all different beings on different vibrations, and what works for one may not work for another. So, I created lots of different programs: Unlock Your Block, Money Magic, hypnosis, and energy alignment, all sorts of different things, and to be able to help people to find their way. And then I moved into the understanding, and I was practicing the law of attraction in many areas of my life, in terms of, attracting the life that I wanted. I was living in a house I liked, in an area I liked, with the work that I loved to do. And I was teaching through classes and meditation groups, and doing one-to-one sessions with people. And then it started evolving and moving, from 2016, when I moved my work online. Well before COVID, I opened up online, and then I was able to access worldwide and help people. And they in turn then helped other people. And you help one person, it's a knock-on effect into the family.
yes.
So, for example, there was one client that springs to mind who'd experienced very bad trauma. I worked with her for some months to work her out of that through the other side, and we got there. But during that time, when she started, she said, I've got children, teenage children, and I know that I am absolutely paranoid about them going out. Won't give them any freedom. Where are you going? And they have to have their phone on them. She has to call them every hour. She has to make sure they're okay. And I just saw, and she saw the way that her trauma was impacting her children, who she was breeding the fear into them, and she was controlling them. They didn't have any freedom or sense of self. And she was aware this wasn't okay. So we cleared it. And at the end of that, she sat down with her family and explained to her children what it was all about, and said, I'm sorry, I've been so controlling, and I want you to have your freedom, and this is why. And that whole family rebonded into a beautiful space. Her teenage children completely understood mum, whereas they were hating on her. Now they were loving on her, and it turned it all around. So that one work with that one woman impacted a family of 6, that impacted the ripples in the pond went on, and then gradually I moved my work into YouTube and started a channel on YouTube and reaching more and more people. And it was really interesting, because initially I was putting out there all sorts of videos to help you to live your best life and empower you. And they weren't really getting a lot of traction. But I'm also, I'm intuitive. I can talk to any of them upstairs. And I was watching some tarot readings, and I was aware that a lot of these tarot readings, in my opinion, were disempowering people, giving them the answers, telling them this is what's going to happen, and this is, and then when it didn't happen, people felt crushed. And I thought, okay, let me tune into this and feel about this. And my spiritual team said, tarot can be a wonderful guide, but it should never be a master. So show them how it should be done, which sounds terribly arrogant to my own ears. But
Right? It should be more about the now, not, well, this is going to happen, that's going to give you a general idea. But I find that when the predictions, because they can shift and twist and turn, so nobody knows really what's going to happen, but they can get a general glimpse. But it's the now that determines the future, because now is the future of yesterday and the past of tomorrow. So there's only now, even though we're talking
there
about.
is only now, but it's very much about your own alignment. And this is the law of attraction that I've been teaching for a long time. So the law of attraction, people like Abraham Hicks and Neville Goddard and a lot of the masters,
Yeah.
this is very much about everything is a vibration, and you can align and match with the vibration
Right.
to bring it about and bring it into your actuality. So I started with the tarot. Yes, I do predictions, and I do psychic readings, and I have been able to predict things well in advance. And so, I know a lot of people.
We're going to have to get some of that, right? With
Well, when I'm doing a one-to-one reading with somebody, I can, predict when things are going to come in, and it's most of the time it's extremely accurate. No reading is ever 100% accurate.
No,
But when I'm doing
the world, we're, talking about the world. So any thoughts that you'd like to share about the world struggle? We have all these conflicts going on simultaneously. I'm an Air Force veteran, so I made a prediction that occurred. I didn't know I didn't know the name of it. I knew that American soil would be hit in 10 years. And I told my commander, because we were, killing Iraqi soldiers in the thousands. And all for oil, everything that we fight for is for resources and power. All these different countries, not just America. It's the same idea. So I was furious. And when I saw the planes hit, I'm like, oh, there, it's right there.
it's cause and effect.
It's
It's
called,
cause.
right. So we're all connected. But, I have feelings about where things are going. But I want to hear your feelings and your insights where you think this world is going, and how that relates to, collectively, how it's affecting us spiritually, and what we have to look forward to.
Okay. Well, the energy predominantly comes from the universe and what's in the collective consciousness. So we have a lot of let me just tune in properly for this. Okay. So we're going through this rebirth. It's been building for some time. Okay. And if we could just rise up out of it a little bit and look at it more from a bird's eye view and say, right, where were we in 1910? 120 years ago, 110 years ago, where were we? And we just take an overview and say, okay, well, women were in Edwardian dress to the floor. They weren't allowed to work. They weren't allowed to own anything. And they weren't allowed property. And then the First World War came, and the women had to go into the factories because the men were at war. And then when they came out of the factories, they said, I don't want to go back to my needlepoint. I actually felt useful and I had a purpose. So there was a little bit of a kind of mini revolution there, and women wanting the vote. And there was this big shift because of what had happened with that war. And we go forward and look at the Second World War, and a similar thing came. There was many things that came out of that were horrific, of course, but there were also amazing shifts forward. NATO came out of that. All of Europe came together and said, we're never going to allow this again. There were various peace pacts that aren't necessarily brilliant, but back then, 45, it was pretty good. It was better than we'd had before. And then we come forward, and you can easily, by looking back at history, say, so what have we gained? Yes, we can look at all the horrible stuff, but what have we gained? What have we learned? And then out of that, in the 60s, we started getting people like Martin Luther King Jr. We started getting people saying this racism is not acceptable. We don't accept this. It had always been tolerated and accepted. Then it becomes unacceptable. You start to see the shift into the light of equality, of power, of empowerment, where some fractions of society are disempowered. You see it through the 70s with burning the bra and women's lib, and let's get some equality going on that side. Then we're coming up into the 80s, and the whole AIDS thing brought up all of the horrific homophobia around the gay community, and saying, look, I've had a word with God about this. He says, I don't care who you love, just love. And it's right. So all of that brought this understanding and awareness, and we can see the way things have shifted forward. And it's all to lead to this point where anything that was hidden, that was disgusting, that was disempowering, that was abusive, has to come up and be seen. So we look back at things like the Jimmy Savile revelations in the UK, with all the amount of child abuse that was going on, and then huge police investigations to find and root out more. The same thing was happening in America with is it Epstein, and things like all the stuff that had gone on for generations was now coming up. So on the surface, people look at it and say, the world's gone to the dogs, things are getting worse, this is terrible, oh my God, what, But we say, yes, but it's coming up so that it could be reckoned with, so it can be sorted. Then we come into the 2000s and the financial crisis of 2008-9 that destroyed so many people's lives. so many homes repossessed, such a disaster, the way the banks were over abusing their lending powers, their borrowing powers, no accountability, no reckoning. Right. So out of that, yes, millions of people suffered, but out of that, new restrictions were put in place, new transparency, new rules. That is never going to happen again. Yeah. We've had similar things going on with politics, with the amount of corruption in politics, lies, deceit still going on, but we're rooting them out more and more and more. We start seeing, it looks like things are getting worse because it's on the news almost every day that somebody's been, found guilty of this, that, or the other.
Yeah.
And so, right, they're now out of politics. So we're pulling out the bad guys and the bad girls so that we can put in the ones with genuine hearts. The one, if you want to be in politics, it's because you want to make a difference. It shouldn't be because you want the power and the greed and the corruption. Right. So the people
Want
with
to
pure
love,
heart.
want people to love and work together.
Yes, that we are one, that we're bringing this oneness in. And
Not a competitive society, a cooperative society.
exactly. Because who are we competing against? And I said this on my channel the other day, I'm competing against the old version of myself and I'm winning. I'm not competing against you because competition indicates lack. And there is no lack. This is an abundant universe. There's enough to go around. We just need to learn to share. We need to start being more cooperative and take care of each other. So we can see the way things are moving forward, the way that which is not truth and light and love is coming up. And that includes wars. So people like Putin, who are in a position of power, who won't seem to relinquish power and go on and on and on, who are abusing their power and disempowering their people, is coming up to get worse and worse and worse until somebody finally says, no, you're out. So, he's doing what he's doing in the Ukraine. The whole Russian people were marching and demonstrating, and then they were just arrested and shut down. But this kind of thing is going to happen more and more and more, where these old-fashioned, power-hungry leaders are being called to the day of reckoning, and they will go. So this continues through. And alongside that, we've got the changes with the climate and Mother Earth saying, oh, what the hell are you doing? And we need to sort something out. Okay, so we will see, we'll see more famine, more flood, more earthquakes, more this, more that, until we as the people take accountability and responsibility and stop saying it's for somebody else to fix it. It's for us to fix it individually, and you as an individual can make a massive difference. Just do you. All right, so it continues. So in terms of what my spiritual team have said to me about the future, they, because they gave me this message back in 1981 or something, that it's right, this is going to move through until we get into the millennium, and then from 2000 you're going to see a big shift in consciousness, a lot more people coming to spiritual awareness and spiritual practice and meditation and peace. And instead of demonstrating against the war, demonstrate for peace. It's a shift in the way that we want to do things. And so they said between 2012 and 2032, that 20-year period is where it's like a pressure cooker, building, 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 and things will start to blow. So this is what we've seen between 2012 and 2032. We have COVID. That was a massive blow. The amount of people who said, I've hated my job for years and I'm not going back. And I never want to do that again. And I'm moving out of the city and I've changed my life and I've restructured and reprioritized my life because I see what matters. That broke open people's hearts a lot. All right, broke a lot of hearts, I know, but it broke open a lot of closed hearts too. And within that opening the heart is, what do I want? I matter. I'm a spark of consciousness. I'm love and I matter. What's important to me? So people start to embrace a new future. And we continue moving through. And so by the time, here we are in 2024, that we're in the last sort of 6 or 8 years of this very uncomfortable rebirth. All right. Now, you ask any woman who's been in labor, I've had 3 children, I remember it, okay, that final push was a huge relief. The final push was the one that hurt the most, but it was a huge relief. It was the hours and hours of the cramping up until that final push. And that's what we're in at the moment. The hours and hours of the cramping. The final push will come. All right. And then we'll be in this new world. So what I see coming forward by 2032, Putin won't be in power, he'll be gone. There will be first contact. Well, I say that tongue in cheek because we've had contact for years.
You can share that because we had the Honorable Paul Hellyer, the highest ranking military official in the world, disclose this on this vodcast. I mean, and I honored him like I'm honoring you today. And he speaks about it like it's another day today. Yeah. It's like it just is like this is not like, and all of a sudden now in Congress, so like in America, oh, it's real, and now they're trying to change the name of it. And stop, please. It's been going on decades.
You want to say to them, like, no kidding, really? We've all known about this for a long, long time.
Think about this. We discover just from where we are, we discover new life forms on Earth all the time. And then we know that we're looking at through telescopes, we're seeing all these other planets, and it doesn't end. And when we extract things, we see that there's life in those things. Like it's all science.
Yeah.
They're still trying to we're going to disclose it. No, it's been disclosed for a while.
So when I say,
how do they help us? I'm like, what Paul was telling me, most of these beings are benign and concerned about the planet. And well, what's your communication like? What do you hear? What do you feel from these ETs and what they plan to do? Because people might want to press a button, right? And I know what this technology can do, but I also feel there's been ET interference preventing it. But I'd like to hear your insight.
Yeah, I completely agree. So for a long time, I've visited in meditations other life forms. I traveled across the universe in different ways, and I have met many other beings. And I've also traveled through different times and spaces, because you're right, there is only the now. So in terms of where we're at, we've had a multitude of spaceships over our energy and atmosphere for decades and decades and decades. They started coming about 150 years ago, but they saw we weren't ready. So they kind of went and said, we'll come back when they've evolved a little bit more. They came back again in the 20s, didn't stay long. There's always one presence that is there, kind of overseeing and looking at what's going on. All right. Some people will call it the Council of Nine, the Galactic Federation. There's all sorts of different names for it. But there is basically a galactic federation of different planets, star systems, galaxies that oversee the universe. They love Earth. They see Earth as a wonderful experiment. The wondrous experiment is Earth. They are not going to let us blow ourselves up. That is not going to happen. They do keep an eye. And as we have been evolving more towards this new era, the golden era, they are more active. So, they became, Area 51 is real, and they've been visiting a lot. They are not dangerous. They are not there to harm us. They are there to help us. And they will be sharing technology with us. They will be helping us to advance, but only when we're ready for it. So there's already been first contact with a lot of the powers that be, and the people right at the top know about it and have had contact already. But in terms of the rest of us mortals knowing about things, they can't hide it anymore, and it's too obvious. So what's going to be happening, and it's going to be starting early next year, is there will be far more sightings in 2025. And because of the proliferation of iPhones and, all the rest of the cell phones, you can't close this down. So it's going to become more and more newsworthy of, more sightings, more sightings, more sightings. And then it will be disclosed far more openly from the government saying, yes, okay, we've been talking to ETs for some years and they're going to tell us about it. to my knowledge, the first contact for us that we're going to see is around about 28 or 29. All right, 2028, 2029. I don't think there's going to be a landing on the White House, but there will be a proper landing and it will be seen. And these beings will connect with the leaders of the world and start discussing ways forward for us as peoples.
Are these the grays, or are these the more humanoids, like look more human like us? Is there different kinds of there are multiple species of aliens, or
Yeah, there are, but the ones that will have contact with us are ones that we can relate to because they are highly evolved beings. Okay, so they can communicate telepathically. They're aware of energy. They're aware of thoughts, and so for us to communicate with them, it would need to be a form of life that we could relate to. So it will be a humanoid form that we will have connection with. It's not going to be something that looks like a dragon or a snake or something really weird from a Star Trek movie. It's going to be a humanoid sort of form. Okay.
your,
Um,
excuse me, your contact has been subconscious contact, or have you ever had physical contact with an alien?
No, not physical contact. This is all energetic. This is all spiritual, if you like. So in my information from my spiritual team, they say the forces of light are gathering. Okay, so they're gathering not to blow us up or harm us in any way. Then their primary concern is protection of us, because what happens with one affects and impacts all, cause and effect. So if we blow up the Earth, that will have a massive detrimental effect across the whole universe and other galaxies and star systems and planets, and they won't allow it. So they will prevent that, but they won't interfere too much. They're not allowed to. All right, we have free will, and this is a law across the entire universes, multiverses. Free will is absolute. And so we have free will and we have to get there in our own time. They can encourage, they can give us information, and they have been doing. Many people in the spiritual world are channelers. I channel myself, I channel a spiritual team, but other people channel star beings, and star beings appear in my team as well. There was the contact with Ra in the 80s, and Ra is a star being, if you like, an ET
Yes.
that resides on a spaceship that is constantly hovering above America. I've done and seen in my travels, astro travels, dozens, hundreds and hundreds of spaceships, if you like, over and around the planet Earth. And they just keep an eye, and they send us a lot of energy, and they send us a lot of information.
Have you seen a spaceship yourself in the air?
Not with my eyes. I've seen them with my energetic eyes, my third eye,
Oh,
in
this
meditations.
totally understand that. Yes. No, I mean, I've known that. That's very common amongst people who are in that practice. But I've known somebody who was not in the practice, who had a hovercraft who was very close to me at the height of a telephone pole with the windows and the colors, and he just sat there, and they were terrified. They said it was the one night they didn't drink. They were sober because they were like, teenager. And they looked up and they froze, and they saw this thing hovering. And they said it was like a humming sound, and then it shot over the pond. It sat there. It was the size of a football field. Like when it's somebody close to you, they have nothing to gain by telling you a story, except they were in awe and terrified because it was so overwhelming. So, but it's, for me, all of that's exciting. It's not surprising. It just is. And I do know that there has been an influence of their technology with all the technology we're seeing now, because we went from horse and buggy over 100 years ago to being in outer space. Like they didn't, what happened the other 2,000 years? Like suddenly there's been an influence of some sort. Part of it, I know that we were taking things that had crashed and using that to try to study it and develop those technologies. Other part is probably some of that the Air Force's interactions and learning about the technology. Now you have AI that just came out of, where that came from, which is going to catapult everything we know multiple times in the next like 3 years. we'll look back 3 years ago and go, what happened? For the better, obviously. Some people who have, dark intentions that might try to tamper with it. But like what you're saying, the higher vibration is now taking over. And that's what,
It's a tipping point. So, there's been thousands and thousands of years where the people as a whole have been controlled by a handful of people. And that has happened, for all over the world for a long, long time. Well, actually, they're correcting me, not all over the world. Indigenous people didn't have that, but so-called cultural world has been controlled by half a dozen kind of elite. That's gone on for long enough. It's gone on for too long, and it needs to be shifted and changed. I mean, when the states was first created and the Declaration of Independence, the intention behind that was absolutely pure. It's, that by coming together and being as one and supporting and helping each other, we become far more powerful. Yes, the intention is that it's gone somewhat out and it needs to be rebooted and rewritten for the modern age, but that's where we need to be going. When I saw with the UK coming away from Europe, I'm like, no, 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 no. We should be pulling together, because Europe is a little bit like the United States of the individual states of America. It's like we should be in Europe, similar thing, that by pooling the resources and pulling together and looking after each other, and then eventually to move into the United world, where we're all supporting each other. That's where we're heading, but that's going to take several more hundred years to get to there. But that's where it will go eventually. But the beings from other worlds, they are there. There are some that are not so pleasant, but they're not allowed to come into our energies. It's okay. In terms of our vibrations, we're raising up from this oppression where we believe we have no power. When you see like 1 million people being controlled by 6, you think, why haven't those million people overcome those 6? Because those million people were so indoctrinated that they had no power, that they didn't. That's going to be dissolving and changing. There will be, of course, a hierarchical, you can't have anarchy. There needs to be some kind of structure, but it needs to be influenced and maintained by people with a pure heart, and currently it is not. And so that's what is changing. But the tipping point I was saying is that we were 90% disempowered, and gradually it's coming down. And as we start awakening and raising our consciousness and understanding that we're love and we're light, and this is a cohesive oneness within this world, then we start to raise our vibration. And when enough people raise the vibration, it's like a seesaw, all right, that the fear and the oppression was winning. And then the light is coming up and the scales start to tip. And then literally those that are on the darker end sort of slide down the scale and the light will. So if you like, it's a bit of a battle going on. But really, I would define a battle as, a fight where somebody's going to win. There isn't a choice here. The light always wins. You shine the light into a dark cupboard, it lights up. All the dark is an absence of light. So all we need, and light is love and positivity and truth and harmony. So all we need to overcome the darkness is that light. So it's about asking yourself, when you get angry and you get fed up and you feel you're stepping into that victim energy, just put your hand on your heart. It's just a simple gesture, and say, what would love say? What would love do? Yeah. And then you immediately flip the energy into that of harmony and love. And when somebody's having a go at you and they're being unreasonable and you didn't deserve it, and you can go into victim mode, they're being horrible to me. Why are they being horrible to me? Just say, what would love say? And what would love do? And when you come at it from the perspective of love, what you see in that other person, instead of seeing they're being horrible to me, you see a person in pain. You see a person who's hurting. You see a person who's frightened, and you see them lashing out in that fear. And instead of lashing back, which just escalates it, you put love into the situation and you say, I'm so sorry you feel like that. I'm so sorry that you are in that space. You're not taking responsibility for it. You're not saying, I'm sorry, it's my fault you're in this space. You're saying, I'm sorry you're in that space. What can I do to help you? And you watch that anger just diffuse. It's not easy to do, but when we can do it, and we can do it more of the time that we don't do it, then we start to see a different world.
It really is. It's, two words I think of is being calm, going deeper into the calm when somebody's outraged, and kind. And kind. There's a
Yeah.
way to talk to people where it's not condescending, where you acknowledge how they feel, and you see through their lens, you see through their pain, and you deeply listen and actively listen by repeating the things that they're saying, acknowledging them. When once people are acknowledged and they feel like you get them, they feel in a safe place
Yeah.
to help guide
Yeah.
their transformation. That's my understanding.
Absolutely, it is. And what I try to do with my channel is that when I'm doing these tarot readings, I'm talking about the energy that is active in that moment over that month or that week. And I'm talking about how they can use those energies to work with it into harmony and into love. So if it's showing that there is conflict perhaps coming up, perhaps within family, then I can use my tools as a therapist and as a spiritual guide to say this is how you manage it. And I use one example one time when I said, okay, so let's say that it's your partner or a member of your family really losing their rag with you, getting really angry with you, then one of your responses could simply to say, wow. And that's ever so effective. You're not arguing, you're not fighting, you're just acknowledging that they're really upset or angry. Like, wow. I said, the other one is, oh, you haven't got to say any more. And then just let them calm down and then talk to them. So I use the opportunities to try and guide people with some positive intentions and some empowerment more than anything else. My readings are to empower. And so what I've done recently, because my essence of who I am is teaching. I love to teach you how to live your best life, teach you how to be in your greatest power, in your greatest heart. And I can do that a lot through that channel. But I really love to teach about the law of attraction and creating. You're in your creative power. So I've just separated them off because a lot of people that are interested in the law of attraction and manifestation and manifesting peace and harmony and all the good things are not necessarily interested in tarot. And I completely get that. So I've
Well,
separated.
may I say something about the law of attraction just for people who are listening in, because some people don't even know what that is. It's as simple as using our words, what things we say, and what that attracts, right? So if I say, I'm gonna have a great day, and I say that on and off throughout the day, more than likely I'm gonna have more positive experiences, just a simple level. But now, if you don't believe in that idea, and say how terrible the day is gonna be, and see what kind of things happen. And when you say that to people, they're like, yeah, I don't want to say that, because they know in some way what they say is affecting everything.
Yeah.
So once you understand that simple idea, then you realize, okay, now wait a second, now I got to come up with these powers. Or if you're going to go into a meeting, you want to say, I'm going to have a great meeting, it's going to be a great meeting, or this is going to be terrible.
Yeah.
Whatever you say prior to that, energetically, being that science has proven that we're electromagnetic fields, people are going to feel the energy that's going to affect that space in time when we enter it. And that's what people don't realize, that this is pure science. This is not just this spiritual. You can look at it, there's two separate things, but the science and spirituality are one thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's so interesting because I've been teaching spirituality for 20 years and I went to university at the age of 50 to study psychology and got a degree in psychology.
that's
And
good.
I was thinking this is going to be quite challenging for me to see how much the science is going to challenge my spiritual beliefs. But actually, absolutely right. They dovetailed in. The power of positive thinking, the power of positive intention has been evidenced scientifically to create and manifest more positive things. So I just moved all of my law of attraction, positive thinking, positive empowerment videos from my tarot channel over into another channel that I've called Manifesting 101. And I want to separate those out and still do the tarot because when I'm doing these readings, it is helping. I read the comments. This got me through a really bad day. This gave me direction. This showed me what to do. Thank you. I've taken that ball and I'm running with it. I can give you the guidance, but I don't want to be your master or I want to be your teacher. I'll show you what to do. Now you go do it. And so I'm doing that now on the both channels, which I'm loving. And I put all of my knowledge into my book. And that has been the force that I want to push this out there, which is that you have the power to create your life as you want it. And that is not just about money. And of course, money is important, but it is about empowerment and love and connections and health and well-being, and to have boundaries and to give yourself permission to say no, because these are things that we were taught as a child not to do. Don't think about you. You just help everybody else. You just put yourself at the back of the queue. This is disempowering. This is disinformation, and it needs to stop. So I put all of this into
Great.
my book, that one behind me, From Hoping to Having.
Well,
And
these are
that's
the false belief systems that have
yeah,
been on for centuries that
yeah,
disempower people.
yeah,
And then people in the know that are a high level, they know that.
yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of that, and they know the power of their words. Like even when they're manifesting money, they know if they say certain things and they think in a certain mindset, they're attracting it everywhere they go. They know that.
Yeah.
So,
But it's having to reteach. The fact that we even have to reteach what is our innate knowing anyway is really sad. But we've had thousands and thousands of years of being taught to be silent, disempowered. You're just, let the powers that be rule everything and run everything, and you just run along and just
oh,
behave and conform. We've had thousands of years of that. So we need to relearn how to take the power that is already ours. And I'm not talking revolution, I'm talking within yourself, within your life. There are many people in dreadfully unhappy marriages, and they say, oh, I couldn't leave. I'm not allowed. Like, you're not allowed, right? Let's just talk about this I'm not allowed thing. This is the sort of thing that needs to change. We have this with attitudes with jobs as well. I hate my job, but there's no other option, there's no other choice. Because you believe that to be so, that is what you're creating. But I promise you, when you change your thinking, a way will be found, and a way will be found. But what happens, like with science, it comes to mind about I can't remember which study it was, but they took, in the days where they were allowed to study animals, they're not allowed to do this anymore. They took a load of dogs and they put them in a cage. And every time they went near the entrance of the cage, they got an electric shock. All right. And they kept them there for a certain amount of time. And then eventually they opened the cage and said, you can go. And none of the dogs went near the opening. Just they've
wow.
given up. I'm locked in this cage and I can't go, even though the cage door was open, because they've been punished every time they went near the opening for so long that, well, it wasn't open, it was closed, but like an electric fence kind of thing,
Right.
then they wouldn't go. And when I was looking at this and studying this, I just thought, this is us as a people in the world, is that we've been suppressed for so long that now the cage door is opening for us to take our power. We're scared to take it. So in any way that we can empower people to say, just follow your heart, follow your truth, follow your love. If you're unhappy, you have a right to change your life and change your way and find your happiness, and to relearn a lot of these misspoken and mistaught programs of others before self, because that is not true. We are all equal and all of us matter. And until we know we matter, we won't change anything. So start with you and things will change.
I just wanted to touch upon like people talk about the elite and how that control of the masses is by the elite. It's been like that since, you know, centuries, as long as we could remember, and how these wars are manipulated and they use religions and all the way this happens. There's an awakening for the elite too. In
Yeah.
other words, the elite are starting to realize that, obviously they're getting in trouble and they're realizing that, you know, I don't have the power that I thought I had. It's been removed from me. Now look at all the suffering I have to endure as a result of choices I've made. They're also realizing too is that you can have billions of dollars. Your child still has to go to school. Or do you want to live underground because people are having war? They don't want to live underground. They want to be able to live their life safely. So if people are not safe in the masses, they're not going to be safe. So they have to empower the masses so that they can enjoy their life. And maybe they won't have as much money, but there'll still be people who have money more than others, depending on what it is and the responsibilities that it entails. I don't think money in itself or being rich or people who have that lifestyle, I don't think it's evil. I think money is not evil. Money is great when utilized to help others, when the stream is flowing.
Yeah.
That,
Money makes you more of who you are.
and I'll tell
And
you,
that is the law of attraction. We become more of who we are. What you think about, you expand, we expand. So, those with great wealth who have a great heart do great things with that wealth.
and I've seen people who they wear a t-shirt, pair of jeans, and they own multiple buildings, and they're like, but they want to make the world better. And I have I remember during the financial crisis, one of my families, I taught their kids, and they had 100 employees in one of these financial firms. They were ready to close, and the owner, who I knew personally, he's like, I don't know what to do. Look, it looks like we're going to close up. He had 300 employees, excuse me. So I said to him, if I was you, I'd be staying up all night long with my CFO and whoever else and really crunch those numbers, because a lot of people have families. I said, I would rather lose sleep knowing I did all I could. That's what they did. The next day, they kept everybody, because you know what they did? They let go of their own pockets. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Example, or another, when they had the movement where people were picketing outside in New York City against the 1%. And then one of those people, I won't say his name too, because he's very dear to me. He was the head of the legal department for AIG. AIG was in all this trouble. He came, he said, he wanted to go to dinner with me. And he said, Sensei, I want to help the world. I want to do something. I want you to form a charity called, and we call it Harmony Power. He says, and AIG will set it up for you, we'll sponsor it. I don't want anything. I just want to see you out there helping children. Those are the things that happen. Those are real stories. And my stories are just mine, and I'm sure there are others. So the awakenings occurred for everyone. And that's the beauty. This is the kind of stuff the media doesn't want to talk about. They want to talk about how bad the 1% is, or they want to go into rough neighborhoods, talk about how violent everyone is when the majority are not. And you might have a gang that is violent, that makes it hard for the whole neighborhood.
But it's
So
propaganda, and people need to understand that. I don't watch the news, and I very rarely watch television,
yeah,
because its purpose, and it's owned, most of the media in the world is owned by the same three people. Its purpose is to keep people disempowered and in fear. So as long as we promote the fear, people who are frightened are looking for somebody to save and rescue them. People who are not frightened are looking to save themselves and empower themselves. So the media just continues to promote fear. There are wonderful stories, as you rightly say, hundreds, thousands of wonderful stories. We very rarely hear about them, because the media just want to push the negativity and the fear and keep people down. It's time to rise up and to say to yourself, am I living my greatest life? Not rise up against, I'm not suggesting go and create a war or anything like that. I'm saying rise up against anything or anyone in your own life that is oppressing you, and say, this is my life, my journey, and it's time I took my power to live the life that I choose. And if that means I need to move job, or change relationship, or let go of these friends who are toxic and pulling me down, and find new friends that align with who I truly am, then that's what I need to do. And taking our power and making things happen and making the change. But as Neil Donald Walsh said in Conversations with God, be the source of the change that you wish to see in the world. Be the source.
yeah, his books are wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, listen, I have something for you right here, and I'm going to send it to you. So this is the award. I'll read it.
Wow.
It says Certificate of Award. Julie Poole has been awarded the certificate for dedication, commitment, and outstanding efforts in promoting harmony in the world.
Oh, that is just so lovely. Thank you so very much. That's so kind.
That's what you do.
Thank you.
I mean, like, and the thing is with people that are in your line of work that are, or our line of work, for me to find the quality and the integrity of you that's more rare. I have to say, there's a lot of people out there trying to sell stuff, and you're incredibly genuine, and your knowledge is vast. Your soul is just it's a beautiful soul. And I highly recommend anyone who sees this broadcast, if you want to reach, they want to reach you, how do they reach you?
You can reach me through my website, juliepoolonline.com, or find me on YouTube, Julie Poole, or my manifesting channel, Manifesting 101. You'll find me there.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on our Harmony Power Vodcast. A great, great blessing.
Thank you for having me, John. It's been an honor. Have a lovely day.